Welcome to r/Maliciouscompliance, where OP gets his sexist boss fired. This was about 20 years ago. I was working as an hourly manager at a popular American fast food place, franchise, not corporate. I'd been there several years and had accrued some vacation time. I requested a week off months in advance to go on a hunting trip a few states away with my dad, who taught me to shoot and hunt. The vacation time was approved by the general manager of the store and I booked the trip, non-refundable. A week before I was due to go on vacation, the head office decided to replace my general manager with one from a different store they owned. The new general manager decided he had to assert his dominance by rejecting my vacation time, and stated that he didn't have enough managers available to cover the shifts. I argued that the trip was already booked, but he wasn't hearing any of it. I liked my job and didn't want to leave, but there was no way I was going to miss this trip. I tried everything to get him to approve the time off, but he scheduled me to work that week anyway. He said if I didn't work, I'd be fired. I told him I was going. I liked my coworkers and didn't want to screw anyone over by having shifts that needed to be covered, so I got them all covered a few days before I left. The general manager wouldn't approve them working for me and still said I had to work. I was working the next day before the trip, Friday, and he knew I was leaving the next day no matter what. Part of my job was to schedule the crew shifts. It typically needed to be done by Sunday for the following week, but on this day he said I had to have it done that day. Cue the malicious compliance. One additional thing to note. This was about 15 years after the most popular girl's name was Ashley and the most popular boy's name was Michael. That means we had 8 Ashleys and 6 Michaels working there. It was normally trouble to keep from having more than 2 of them there at the same time because of labor laws. That Saturday, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., the lunch rush on the general manager's shift, every single one of them was scheduled at the same time. I can only imagine the chaos when he wanted one of them to do something. When I picked up my last check, another shift manager confirmed that it was as glorious as I had imagined. I'm trying to imagine what the shift schedule looked like. 11 a.m. shift. Ashley, 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 and Ashley. Our next Reddit post is from Analytica Zero. Years ago, I was working for a large organization. My boss was very nice and pleasant to work with, at first. I was hired and tasked with taking a very troubled department and bringing it up to standards. My boss was fairly supportive during the initial few months on the job, but then something changed. The department began to perform and improve greatly within the first 6 months, and this was recognized and heralded by upper management. This made my boss look good and also improved overall morale in the team within the troubled department as they were finally recognized for their efforts and talents. About this time, the 6-month mark, I was told to watch my back by a few other colleagues, both men and women, outside of my department because my boss had a reputation for putting her own success over anyone else's. They also warned me that she was known for being very threatened by any successful males who worked for her. Male here. She was a very big champion of the women on her team and regularly promoted and advocated for them, but it seems that every male that worked on her team ended up leaving or getting fired. This was something I wasn't aware of when I was hired. I'm also the only male on the team. After investigating this further, I found there to be some truth to all of this. As it happens, over a 12-year period, over 8 men on her team either quit or were fired. 6 fired and 2 quit. Of the women on her team during the same period, 8 were promoted, 2 quit, 4 were still on her team, and 0 were fired. So I'm a bit concerned about this now, as 1, I'm a male, and 2, she has this reputation for making it difficult for men on her team. I just took this all in stride, however, and focused on continuing to manage the department to greater levels, work on continuing to increase the morale of the department, and ensuring I communicate with my boss regularly about any situation that would become problematic for her or me. I also focused on ensuring that she got maximum credit for the improvements of the troubled department and credited her with being a great boss that ensured that the department received the resources and support that it needed to succeed. Fast forward to about my 8th month there, and I'm in a meeting with my boss, and she begins to rage against me that I emailed someone who was in the upper management of the company. I explained to her that yes, I did CC that VP because the email in question was one that necessarily involved the entire area under which this particular VP led. She said that I'm not to do that and then proceeds to tell me that I am forbidden to email anyone that is above my pay grade, as that is not my place. She then tells me that only she is allowed to email these people, and that if an email needs to go to them, CC or not, she will send it. I ask her if she would like me to send the emails that would need to go to the VPs to her for her to send, and she tells me, yes, send them to me, and then I will send them. I ask her also if she wishes I don't call the VPs on the phone as well, and she says, yes, you are not to call them either. Then she says, I know you may be used to getting your way because you're a man, but this doesn't mean you can try to take my job. What? I'm kind of befuddled at this and just take it all in and decide that I need to respect her wishes because there must be something else going on here of which I'm not aware. Okay, fine, we'll do it your way. About a month goes by, and during that time, I only need to email a VP once, and I write up the email to this VP's department, send it to her, and then wait for her to send it on. Now, this email is time sensitive and involves giving the VP and his people a heads up about resources needed for a particular project. Now, the VP must be included in this email because this request involved budgetary issues, and only the VP over a specific area is allowed to change or adapt their budget. Otherwise, I would have just communicated directly with the members of this other VP's team to give them the heads up. So I send the email to my boss, ask her to send it on within the next 3 days, and then I wait. About a week goes by, and I happen to run into this particular VP in the elevator. She asked me about the project, resources, etc., and I let her know that things are good. She then asks about the overrun on this one particular area, and I tell her that it's best she ask my boss. She then asked me to send her an email on this particular overrun, and I let her know, sure, I'll make that happen. I follow back to my boss, let her know about the conversation with the VP in the elevator, and she blows up at me. Starts yelling and screaming and telling me that I'm not even to talk with that VP or any VP about this project. I explained to her that sure, I get it, but I would have been rude to not acknowledge this VP's question since we're stuck in the elevator together and I didn't seek out that meeting. She then begins to tell me that she has to write me up for being insubordinate and not honoring her request to not email, call, or talk to VPs. I'm floored, but nothing I can do. As I'm leaving her office, she tells me, I made a mistake in hiring you. I thought you were different, but you're just as entitled as all the other men I've hired. Man, okay, this is going really well. Do I go to human resources and have them play their stupid games with me? Nah, not gonna solve anything. Especially with a boss that's been with the company for 10 years or so. Human resources generally cares very little about employees and only really worries about risk and protecting the company. They're not gonna do anything for me, so I don't report any of this. I seriously thought about filing a complaint about my boss's comments to me, but when I had the meeting where I had to sign my write-up, I decided against it given the HR officer had to read the write-up before I signed it, and I figured that since the write-up was based on a BS policy that my boss created out of thin air, I was right in assuming that HR would do nothing for me if I had complained anyway. So I just tried to get through all this stuff and start looking for another job on the side. 2 days later, I get a call from Super VP, to whom the VP from the elevator reports to. Now, my boss also reports to another VP. This VP is female, and also not the same as the one from the elevator. And the VP to whom my boss reports also reports to this Super VP. This Super VP asked me to come to a meeting that next day. I explained that I'm happy to do so, but I'll need to check with my boss first to ensure that there are no conflicts in the schedule. I also state to this Super VP that I would appreciate it if she would contact my boss as well to ensure that my boss is made aware of her request. The Super VP pauses and then tells me, no, that won't be necessary in this case, and then hangs up. Shoot! So I email my boss, tell her that the Super VP is requesting to meet with me the next day and wanted to make her aware of the meeting. She comes storming into my office around 5:30 p.m., about an hour before I usually leave, and closes my door and berates me for a good 20 minutes for talking with the Super VP. She was so loud that one of the members of the department in which I worked was about to call security just before my boss exited my office. I knew my boss would be mad, but didn't expect anything like this. So next day, I go to the meeting with Super VP. At that meeting is another 3 VPs. The first is the female VP who I ran into in the elevator and was asking about overruns. The second is the female VP to whom my boss reports. The third is a female VP who used to oversee the department in which I presently work. The SVP proceeds to ask me about the overruns. I explain as best as I can about the issues involved and also explain that I'd prepared an email a few weeks ago about this. The VP, who I ran into in the elevator, states that she never got the email on the cost overruns from me. I then explain that it wouldn't have come from me, but would have come from my boss. The VP asks why I wouldn't send it. I say that it's not my place to send emails to VPs. Then the super VP stops everyone from talking and says, "What did you just say?" I then reiterate my response. Then the super VP begins questioning me about this point. After about 15 minutes of my explaining to them that I'm not allowed to communicate with them per my boss's orders, they're all pretty disgusted and frustrated. I further explain that this policy was created by my boss and has been consistently enforced by her for the past month or so. They tell me that they'll have to come back to me on this, but in the meantime, they'll get the emails about the overruns from my boss and I'll follow up with her. Shoot. So I go back to my office that day and realize that my head is on the chopping block. I am really in a no-win situation and I just have to wait for it to play out. And play out it did. I come into work the next day, it's a Thursday, and I don't think anything has changed. Seems like a normal oppressive day and I'm just waiting for the axe to fall on my head. I work most of the morning and then right before lunch, I get an email. The email is from the super VP with all the VPs copied on it, that my boss is taking some time off and will be back in a few days. During her absence, all requests and management decisions will be made by the VP to whom my boss reports. I'm not quite sure what this means, but given the weekend is coming up, I'm just glad this friggin' week is almost over. The day goes by uneventfully, and around 4 p.m., the VP responsible for the department in which I work comes down and comes into my office and tells me that as of that day, my department and I am no longer reporting to my boss, but I was now reporting directly to her. I asked what that means for the department and my job. She said nothing. It just means that the department will be better served under this new reporting structure, given the increase in the amount of business that the department was engaged in since my hire, as well as the strategic internal leverage that would be needed going forward. I also was explicitly told that I was free to now communicate with any other VP or super VP of the organization as I saw fit. She then apologized for the experience I had with my boss and told me that she was unaware of my bosses forbidding me to communicate with her or other VPs or super VPs. I take this all in, not knowing who is telling the truth, but relieved that I will no longer have to endure being treated like a child by my boss. I then ask about my boss and her reporting relationship to my department's other team members, and was told that she was forbidden to execute orders to them on her own unless she has my prior approval. Karma. I stay at this company for about 3 years total, have a great working relationship with the VP, who was now my boss, as well as the other VPs and super VP to whom they reported. I only left when I got a better offer in a different industry. My former boss was eventually counseled out over a 3-month period after HR investigated her behavior, interviewed me about the arbitrary rules about communicating with the VPs that my boss had enforced on me, as well as her shouting at me and writing me up and disparaging me as male. Talk about karma. Her write-up of me was used as evidence that she actually had implemented this no contact policy solely with me. And because she wrote it up and put it in my employee file, it proved my veracity about the entire no contact issue. In addition, and also compounding the problem, they found other alleged issues concerning cost overruns and financial reporting irregularities that she had hidden over the years. I've never seen her again, but if I ever do, I would love to be able to say to her, "Great seeing you again. I always tell people that you're the boss that taught me the importance of using email to further my career." This lady is such a Karen that she's literally telling her employee, "No, you cannot speak to your manager. Only I can speak to the manager." Our next Reddit post is from Trees K. My father has been a lawyer here in British Columbia, Canada for more than 30 years. When he was starting out in his 30s, he was hustling hard to support a stay-at-home wife for me, his young son. As he was very much a type A personality with not much patience, he sped on the highways, often. And he got speeding tickets, often. However, he took every single one to court and had every single one overturned. The reason was quite simple. At the time, Canada was in the process of switching over from imperial miles per hour to metric kilometers per hour, and all of the road signs had to be replaced. Now, the British Columbia Legal Code specified that a road sign was legally comprised of 2 signs on a pole. Apparently, at some point, someone in charge of replacing all the signs with the new metric ones decided that they could save a considerable amount of money by printing all the information on one sign. But this no longer complied with the specifics of the legal code. So he would go back to the exact sign that he was ticketed because of and take a picture of it, and then bring the picture to court along with a copy of the laws in question. His defense was very simple. He would allow the arresting officer to take the stand and give his testimony regarding the issue of the ticket, and then show the officer the picture he took and ask them to identify whether that was the sign that he had sped past. They always agreed, saying that it was, in fact, the very same sign. He thanked them and then dismissed them with no further questions. He would then bring the picture to the judge along with the bookmark page of the BC Highway Act and present the judge with the exact wording of the law, followed by his factual argument that since there was only a single sign posted, it did not constitute a legal road sign as defined in the Highway Act. As I said before, every single ticket was dismissed and all my dad lost was a half hour of his time. This worked for almost a decade, with him overturning literally thousands of dollars of speeding tickets until the law was changed. He still speeds, by the way. Then we have a similar story from Subtle Glow down in the comments. My dad got out of a speeding ticket for years in the same area, all because tree branches were somewhat blocking the sign. The sign was still absolutely readable, but there was a law stating that the sign had to be 100% unobstructed. When the city decided they were over his shenanigans and cut back the tree, he did what any reasonable person would do. He took a ladder out there and took a picture of the sign from above, so it looked like it was still obstructed. The judge asked him how he could possibly not be aware of the speed limit after being stopped there so many times. My dad's reply was that was hardly the point. The law was very clear. Got out of that ticket, too. That was rSlash_Maliciouscompliance, and if you liked that video, hit that like button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.